Hi everyone, welcome back to HSBC Life's Live Well series, episode 4 today. So following up from last week, we were talking about spinal health. Today we're actually going to move further down the body and we're going to go into our lumbar spine or our lower back area and our hips. I always like to add a theme to my episodes. So today's theme is learning from failure, which actually leads me to talk a little bit about this TED Talk I was listening to the other day. It's by a guy called Tim Gibson, and he said a quote that really resonated with me. And it is, failure is knowledge and knowledge is success. So that is up to however you want to interpret it, but I'm going to actually continue to speak about that as we move forward today. So grab a mat and let's get started. Okay, so we're going to get started. We're actually going to start off facing our mat this way. I'm going to start off in a kneeling hip flexor lunge. So if you have a small towel, I generally like to put this underneath my knee because otherwise my knee will get a little bit sore. It can be quite hard with surfaces. So I'm going to place my right knee on the mat and I'm going to bring my left foot forward. So when you're actually doing hip flexor stretches, a lot of the time I see people just open up into a hip flexor stretch. This does not really count. You might feel something, but what I want you to try and do is find a squaring of your hips. So start by pulling your hips forward and imagine you have two laser beams here shooting forward. Then from here, I actually like to tuck my toes under just so I have more leverage through the back. And what we're gonna do here is go as far forward as you can first. So I go as far as I can, and then I'm going to squeeze my bum cheek, which is gonna pull me out quite significantly. This is where I'm gonna find my hip flexor stretch. And today's mobility routine is actually gonna be a little bit slower, where we're gonna go through some longer stretches, more so that you actually start developing a little bit more length through your tissues. I'm only gonna take you through 1-minute segments today, but please feel free to stay longer if you want to. You can always pause the video. Okay, so here what we're gonna look to do is actually stay a little bit more active rather than static. As I continue to squeeze my bum, I'm gonna tuck under. So you can see here, my tailbone is scooping under and I'm holding this position here. Then I'm gonna come out, then I'm gonna come back in, squeeze. So you can see how the bum shape actually changes as I relax and as I contract. And I'm just gonna do that 10 times per side. And that's roughly gonna bring me to about a minute. So if you ever get stuck on time, you know it's gonna be 1 minute per side. It doesn't take long and you will feel so much better for actually getting it done. If this is not enough for you and you wanna go further into the stretch, first way you can actually progress is by leading your hips a little bit more forward. And if that's still not enough, you can always bring your hand above your head and start to add in a longer line of the stretch. So you can stretch your arm up if you want to, but still keep the contractions going. And last one. And hold. Now from here, I'm actually gonna transition straight away rather than going to the other side into our next stretch, which is gonna be a quad stretch. I'm already in a base position where I can reach back. So I'm gonna lean slightly forward and then try to kick my own bum. If you can't get here, if you're really tight, you can always put your hand down on the floor, maybe grab a block. And this here is gonna give you a little bit more leverage, okay? So you reach back wherever you can. I'm gonna stick without the block because I know I do this pretty much every day, which is how I manage to maintain length through my tissues. So as I come forward, I'm gonna find this. Same thing applies to my hips. I keep them square and then I'm gonna squeeze and tuck my tailbone under and then I'm gonna come forward, come back out. Forward, come back out, and keep finding that quad stretch. If you find this isn't enough and you want to go further, you can go both hands, pull it towards your bum, and hold here rather than rock forwards and backwards. So if option 1 was enough for you, you stay there, or you can stay in option 2 with me and just hold. Taking deep breaths in. As you continue to find that breathing pattern, you start to sink deeper into the stretches, maybe increase your range a little bit more. And if it doesn't work the first time, it's okay. You try again. It's just like what we talk about with failure. I don't actually believe there is such thing as failure. I actually think that everything that you do, if it doesn't go wrong, there's another way that you can approach it. And every single thing is a way of learning, okay? So failure is, like I said earlier, failure is knowledge, which ultimately is just teaching you new things. So from here, we're gonna slowly release that. We're gonna
transition into a hamstring stretch. So some of my exercises are gonna be static exercises where we just go from exercise to exercise, and other times I teach you how to create flows. So I'm kind of linking the two up today. And then by the next episode, you might notice that we're gonna go into a flow. So from here, as my knee is still on the mat, all I'm gonna do is pull my hips back and then pull my toes up. I'm gonna use the block through my left hand right now just to give me a bit more support to make sure I can keep my hips square. Now, if the block is too low here, you can always put the block on the side this way, or maybe even come up higher. It all depends on your flexibility, okay? So wherever you are, square your hips, keep your toes up, and instead of rounding down like most people try to think this is actually a hamstring stretch, I want you to really try and think of actually pulling your tailbone back. So my left hamstring has got an old injury, and I know I'm already feeling the stretch, so I'm not gonna push too far on this one. I'm actually gonna pull the block up a little higher for me. So here, I wanna think of pulling my tailbone back and then reaching my lower belly forwards. And as I hold this position here, this is the only one we're gonna hold the stretch for. If you don't have a block, you can always use maybe a couple of books, for example. If you got books nearby, if you don't have a tall book, you can stack books on top of one another. When I was teaching some of my online classes, I know it might not be accessible to have yoga equipment, for example, or any other kind of fitness blocks or whatever you have, but you make do with what you have in your environment. Maybe you have a water bottle. I've got a water bottle there. If I need support, I can hold on to the water bottle as well. From there, we're gonna slowly come forward. And now we're actually gonna go into our pigeons. So the only thing I need to do here is I'm gonna shift my foot across. So now my front foot has to be in line with the side of my mat. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of the time I see people go into pigeon stretches and they do this and they're like, I'm a beautiful pigeon and I'm nice and long. But realistically, you're not gonna get the most out of opening your glute face. So once again, I'm gonna use whatever I can get. I've got a block, but if you have a book, I'm gonna invite you to slide the book underneath your bum cheek where you would choose to sit. And then I'm gonna move my foot forward. I readjust the towel to make sure my knee is comfortable in the back spot. And now I'm gonna press my left knee down with my left hand. You can see how my hips are slightly opening up towards you. I'm gonna slowly, I'm gonna slowly roll forward and keep my hips square. So my back toes are actually tucked under to ensure that I have stability, but also I've got leverage here. If I need to move my hips, I can control it with my toes. If I'm in this position here with my toes down, I might feel like I'm doing it and it might look better, but realistically, if I come off balance or if I get lazy, my hips are gonna open up and I'm gonna sit in a stretch this way. It might look like you're doing it, but I can feel completely different in through my hip right now, and I don't actually necessarily feel that pulling sensation. So in your glute stretches, I want you to try and picture, one, your anchor is this leg here. Okay, so I'm anchoring my leg down. Then I square my hips up by rolling my hips forward. The reason why I hold this down is because a lot of the time, again, if I were to square my hips up without holding it, I'd probably go into my back or my foot would drop down. So I'm gonna hold on to it, and then the last cue here, instead of lowering down, I wanna think of pulling my left hip back now, okay? So my left bum cheek, I wanna pull backwards. So from here, I'm gonna tug it back. And then if this is not enough for you, that is when you lower down with your belly and you stay here wherever you find that stretch. And again, it's that uncomfortable spot, but never sharp pain. You breathe in and out through this. So I'm chucking in a couple of curveballs in this week. I just like to make you think a little bit rather than just do all the time. So once we finish this minute, we're actually gonna reverse the sequence. As we come out of it, you gently come back up and you can come out however you want, okay? It's not the flow yet. You can use your hand to move your foot, or if you have the control, you can also move it yourself. But it doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong right now, as long as you're doing it safely. So I'm gonna transition to the other side. I'm rearranging my towel, and I know I'm gonna start off with my pigeon first. So what happens in my pigeon? I'm gonna step my foot across. I'm gonna slowly find that area where I know I want that 90-degree angle. So if you're ever stuck on what it should look like, if you have a towel or if you have a yoga mat, whatever it is, as long as you have this, your shin parallel to the front of whatever you're using, okay? Your foot is in line with the side of it and your knee is in line with the side of it. Straight away from here, you anchor down, you stay upright, you keep your back toes curled under, and then once again from there, we're gonna slowly pull the right hip back before you lower. And then you can start to lower down if you want. You can elongate that back leg a little bit further, and you hold. Something that is really, really important is also just being present. I think that we all get caught up in trying to do too much, and I know that I'm guilty of that as well. But everyone has their work-ons. Everyone's got their own stories to tell. Everyone has their own agenda. But within all of that, it's just a matter of trying to find that balance between it all. And I think we talk about this holistic well-being a lot, but I think the biggest question is always asking yourself why it is that you're doing something, what it means to you. And when you can answer that question for yourself, even if it's not really with words, maybe it's through emotions, then you start to get a better idea of the meaning behind your actions, rather than just going through the motion of it. The next exercise, which we came from, was hamstring stretch. So as I slowly come out of that, I'm gonna shift up, I'm gonna move my foot back across to the right-hand side now. I use the block on my left hand, but I know my left side is my bad side. I'm actually not gonna use this because I know my right hamstring is way better, and you'll be able to see that too. You pull your toes up towards your face. You pull your right hip bone back as far as you can go. And then from there, if you have space, you start to lower your belly down. So again, you could see my left side, I had to use a block. That just goes to show there are imbalances across your body. You have to recognize that rather than just think, I could go down this low on one side, why can't I go down the other side? Listen to the little clues. Put it all together and maybe try and start finding a solution for it rather than complain about it or blame your body for being a certain way. As we hold this position, the last two were the static stretches before we go into the active ones. So from there, we're gonna transition to the next one. It is your quad stretch. I didn't forget. I'm just tricking you. I'm giving you a moment to think about it. So in your quad stretch, once again, come back forward, grab onto your foot. So there you go. Now you know this isn't scripted. So you're gonna pull your foot towards your bum. You're gonna squeeze your bum as much as you can, and you're gonna find that stretch. So again, out of the two sides, my left side in general, in terms of my lower body, is way tighter than my right side. So here, I'm not gonna reach back with two hands, I'm just gonna hold the one hand. And if I want to, I can move a little bit in and out, but I don't wanna go too much. I do wanna just think more about the bum squeeze, pulling my hips forward versus trying to go forward, which again, linking into the next stretch or the active mobility drill with the hip flexor one, you see it's not about going as far as you can, rather it's about contracting from the right areas, because when you squeeze from one side, you're gonna lengthen on the other side. And when you picture your body working in opposites all the time, that's when you can start to better understand, okay, if I squeeze my bum, I'm gonna lengthen my hip flexors. If I squeeze my quads, maybe I'll lengthen my hamstrings, for example. Everything has two sides to it, and when you picture that, you can also apply that to your everyday life as well. I think you're soon gonna realize that there are ways that you can apply everything to your life. So if you get that, then I'm sending the right message. Okay, from there, we're gonna slowly go back into our hip flexors, and this is our last one before we come to a close. I'm gonna gently release. Now, again here, I'm purposely slowing down because sometimes people just drop it down. You want control throughout all your movements, so as I come down, I tuck my toes under, and then from here, I'm gonna find that squaring of the hips, squeeze my bum, and again, I think I can go a little lower, so this is my limit here. Stretching the arm up if you want to. If not, remember, you can bring it back down. And then from there, you just untuck, tuck. Now I'm feeling pretty good right now after doing all those other stretches, so I am gonna raise my arm up. We finish off with last 10 pulses here. You can add a slight side bend if you want to go a little deeper into it.
I thought it would be nice to actually just share the 4 stretches that I did with you guys. So we went through a hip flexor stretch, a quad stretch, a hamstring stretch, and also a glute stretch, which was the pigeon. Typically, I would actually say hold for a minimum of 2 minutes if you're doing these things on your own. I did compress them a little bit and held for 1 minute at a time. There is science to show that if you don't hold stretches for long enough, you don't actually get long-term change, which is why 2 minutes is kind of the magical number that people advise on. I'm not going to say it's a must. If you're not gonna hold it for 2 minutes, at least try it. Try it out for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever you can hold it for, and then maybe build every single time you go from there, even if it's just by 2 seconds. And then from there, you have your building blocks, you keep moving forward, and then you start to see the benefits little bit by little bit. That's all for today. I hope you stay tuned for our next episode where we're gonna go back and wrap up the whole body in our episode 5 of the HSBC Life Live Well series. Thanks for watching and see you next time.